Mateo Rossini?
Yes.
Did I say that right, or did I mess up the
You
pronunciation?
said it perfect, my friend.
Oh man, I try to. It's like a personal challenge of mine, like just to get the names correct, and I always second guess myself immediately after I do it. But I always tell myself, "Oh, I'm just getting better at names."
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So for the folks listening, we're out here at Paleo FX. We're outside. They're gonna hear a little wind. It's all positive. But let's start with where we are right now. Like you just took a huge deep breath, calmed yourself, centered yourself. Talk about that. Why did you do that? What does that mean to you?
There's a lot of noise going on all times. I think it's important to take a moment and just ground yourself, check into what you're about to do, where you're at in the moment, feel yourself, and come back into your body. And in that way, I like to do a little just invitation to spirit above to let whatever needs to come out of me come out of me.
Yeah.
So I can be the best conduit I can, clear myself out of the way as much as possible.
Yeah, just to be completely present in that moment and just to be there.
Or at least try,
Yeah. Dude, and we're in like a society full of distractions, so
Yeah.
it's a true skill these days to be able to like just to center yourself and be present, right? Just be conscious of like what's happening. So I want to start with like the beginning of your journey, because you seem to have been on this journey for quite some time. In fact, you just actually made a post the other day. I do believe it was like you have 13 certifications, 15 certifications. I can't remember the exact number. It was a number. It was double digits.
A lot of certifications.
A lot of certifications, right? Just along this journey, like just
Yeah.
you need CEUs for that that coveted NASM cert, right? That you talked about.
Knocked that one out like 2 weeks ago. That felt good.
Yeah, and that's a weird one, right? Because it's not really relevant in the sense of like information.
So I'll share a great story with you, my friend. For the longest time, man, like I was getting all these different certifications, and I didn't want to get the NASM because I wanted to be like rebellious. I was like, how far can I get in this industry without conforming to the industry standard? And I've never been like a textbook guy. Just trying to read through a textbook is just not the way that I absorb information. So I was like, took a lot of pride in the fact that I didn't have my NASM. And like how educated and how smart could I get without that? And I was actually having a conversation with my girl, and she was like, so you ever think you're going to get your NASM? I'm like, nah, I don't think I ever will. I don't think I need it. And then I had some changes come out of my life out of nowhere. One of those situations where it's like you think you got things figured out, and then all of a sudden life throws a curveball your way, and you're like, whoa, I got to reevaluate. And all of a sudden, it became clear that the NASM was what I needed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it was just like a very humbling moment from life where I got like this big ego thinking, I'm so certified, I don't need that NASM. And then boom, knocked right down. And the next day I'm like, okay, let's start studying for my NASM.
Yeah, there's some good information in there. The thing that and maybe it was just something that I was constantly combating whenever I took mine, was like I'm learning all this information through like podcasts and different books that I'm reading. I'm just like, this information is so old. Like they're telling me to like limit sodium and lower your fat and different things. I'm just like, this is not accurate science. I don't know where they're getting this stuff from. So, but that's like the challenge with I would probably say just the health and wellness space in general, that a lot of the real-time information is taking 20, 30 years sometimes to assimilate into like what's being taught.
So that's a pretty amazing thing, right? How much the general understanding has grown in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy to think that like 8 years ago people thought fats made you fat, and now we're at a convention where there's like 9 different kinds of fat products.
Right.
And just how far the general understanding of nutrition and fitness has grown, and how I see it still evolving in these new things, these new paradigms coming into play that are shaking the foundation of everything we thought we knew.
Yeah. So what was your start in like what was the beginning of your health journey? What was a young Mateo like? I personally was a fat kid.
Yeah,
like,
me too, man.
Like what was your journey?
So I started off, my first taste of flow was hip hop. I used to flow, like write lyrics and make music, and that was my first like taste of getting out of myself and finding that state that I was kind of addicted to.
Yeah, that expression.
So I went to school for music industry and technology originally, and was a music producer. Spent a lot of time producing music.
Okay.
And spent a fuck ton of time sitting, man. and it killed me.
Yeah.
Because I just have one of those dispositions where I can't sit, man. I have to move.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. My whole life, no one told me that, hey, you should probably be moving. You're one of those kids who needs to work out like a motherfucker every day or else you're going to feel stressed.
Yeah.
So, I always like got labeled as an ADD kid, always had trouble in school. And at some point, because I'd gotten kind of unhealthy doing so much sitting and just making music, I found out about Ido Portal.
Okay.
And learned his whole philosophy on movement. That kind of opened my eyes to movement as a general practice outside of these specific modalities, and kind of reignited and sparked my interest in it. And I kind of had a comeback moment where I just started going to the gym hard and started with hitting the bag. That was like my first thing.
Yeah.
And just kind of fell in love with it. My first modality that I went really deep into was yoga.
Okay.
So that was my first certification. I got my yoga teacher cert. And then came back and went almost immediately to managing a studio, teaching HIIT classes, and teaching yoga classes.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that started my journey.
Yeah, so you just completely transitioned like all that energy that you're putting into music into health and wellness.
That's been an interesting thing about my life, man. There's been a lot of things that have consumed me, and then I seem to have evolved and moved on from. And it's an interesting thing, right? Because when you've defined your life one way, and then you evolve to something else, people tend to be like, so what happened? You don't like that thing anymore?
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, you don't lose love for one thing. You just gain a love for another thing, and there's not more hours in the day.
Right. Yeah, man. And it's so funny that, like, I was talking about this yesterday. We really do have the power at any moment to really create the life that you want to live, and you can be whoever you want to be. If it's like, a lot of people always and I'm guilty of this. I'm an introvert. Like I don't want to go and like put myself out there, like meet people or like be friendly and talkative. But like deep down, like you really do, because like we need each other. Like humans need other humans. Yeah. And then one day I'm just like, you know what? No, fuck that. Like I'm going to be this person. And then you can just wake up and decide to be different. Like it takes work every day and it's not easy, but you can definitely make a choice to be different as soon as you wake up. But society or people, those in particular, usually closest to you, they will try to keep these like parameters on you and these labels. Like, no, this is what you said you were doing, so you have to do this like forever now. Like you're stuck.
Yeah, you got to be constantly willing to kill who you are in order to become who you could be.
Yeah. What sent you down like that enlightened path?
Dude, I have always, this is something that's been unique about me. I've always told myself less stories about myself than most people. Like, I don't remember a ton of my life. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, yeah, I'm this way because back in 4th grade, this thing happened to me, and ever since then, I've been like this. I'll be like, I don't remember shit about 4th grade, man. Like, and I've had a long life of a lot of experiences, and I just, for some reason, I've always been better than most people I know at just reinventing myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You ever have those conversations where somebody, you just kind of mentioned, like somebody will ask you about something. I get it, especially if I talk to like people from like my past in like high school or something. It's like I don't remember that time at all, or even just like 5 years ago something happened. I'm just like,
remember when Jenny did that thing back freshman year? And I'm like, man, I don't remember any of this. Like, you guys remember all this like stuff about? It's just something I've noticed over the years. Many times I've had people like bring up stuff, and I'll be like, no, that's just, it's not. I don't think I've wasted the neurons in my brain to form those connections. Dude. It's interesting.
Well, there's only so much that you can know and so much that you can remember, right? And everybody, we all have this, at least me anyway, like I have this thing where I always assume people know what I know. And that's like the worst thing ever. So you shouldn't assume anything. I just read the 4 Agreements.
Great fucking book,
dude.
Man.
Amazing book.
Yeah.
And like so like you shouldn't assume anything. But I've been terrible at making that assumption. So you went down yoga. Why was yoga that first modality for you? Like, what draw you to that practice?
So what's so unique about yoga, man, and what I'm so still emotionally attached to about it is how it's a movement practice, but it's also a conduit to teach other perspectives. So you can through yoga help people connect to the present, help people connect through their breath, to their body, to the moment, help people find how to get outside of their head. So it puts you in really challenging circumstances and then asks you to be at peace.
Yeah,
And
by needing to breathe
and needing, yeah, by just saying, hey, return to your breath, constantly be focusing on your breath, you are eventually, through the process of constantly being reminded to come back to the awareness of your breathing, being pulled out of your head and back into your body. And that's something that's it's not focused on in a lot of other movement modalities. They might say to breathe, but there is really it's a spiritual practice, yoga, right? It's
yeah.
bigger than just a movement practice, and that's what really attracted it to me, because I've always been kind of into spirituality in the esoteric sense, non-traditional.
Yeah. Sometimes humans, like, we like to put these meanings to things, and we like to define things. And for me personally, like in the spiritual, like the religious sense, it's nice to have like these different, like these practices like yoga or like psychedelics and plant medicine that can allow you to really just expand your mind and like explore that spiritual side of like the world without all like the dogmatic effects of certain religions, I found. Yeah, that's a powerful statement that you just said. So I want you, if you can, or if you don't mind, can you just dive deeper into breath work, because
Totally.
it's so important. And I would even say, like, it's the essence of life. I mean, you can go weeks without food, you can go days without water, but you only go minutes without breath. Like, it's essential to life. So would you mind just diving deeper into breath work for me?
Yeah, breath is an interesting thing, and to try to articulate why I think it's so unique, there's a couple facets, couple aspects. One being that your breathing is the only muscular control that is both consciously regulated and non-consciously regulated. So you don't have to pay attention to your breathing, and you will breathe automatically. However, you can consciously control your diaphragm, and it's unique in the whole body in that way. There's no other muscle that is consciously controlled and automatically regulated.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and I don't know why, but something about having a system in your body that is automatic, but then you consciously regulating that, it brings you back into yourself in a physical sense. So we spend a lot of time in our heads, and when you're focusing on your breathing, it's just a good anchor, right? You can meditate on a lot of things. You can meditate on the feeling of the sun touching you, but for some reason the breath tends to be like the most effective anchor, and this is just what's arisen from thousands and thousands and thousands of years of practice. Vipassana has emerged as kind of like the one.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's also the physiological effects of what's happening with the breath. And I'll just talk about like my experience. My first experience doing breath work was at my yoga teacher training, and it was like mind-blowing. Completely changed my life. It was like it was one of those experiences that I had, and I was like, holy shit, everybody needs to try this. How does everybody not know this is a thing? And yeah, it's been a path since then to try to share this with people.
Yeah. And it's funny because the automatic process of breathing is actually what most people tend to do, right? And you from a result, you tend to have shallow breath, which isn't really the best thing for us. So it's like actually taking control is like that is the mechanism for I don't know, just like a healthy good breath, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm communicating
Totally.
that very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's another thing that you brought up with breathing, is that there's kind of two ways that we breathe. The secondary breathing muscles, which happen to come into play a lot in modern day society. People are breathing very shallowly through their mouth. And then the deep breathing muscles, when you're activating your whole diaphragm to actually take a full breath. Now, just for generally people know, and I think this is interesting because I'm just starting to learn more about this myself, there's a practice called like Buteyko breathing.
I'm not familiar.
Where you only breathe through your nose.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be really helpful for anxiety, for sleeping issues, for people who are not good at activating their primary breathing muscles.
Like their diaphragm.
Because they spend so much time with their mouth open, shallow breathing. So this is something new I've just learned about. Of course, I've done a bunch of fire breathing, kundalini stuff through the nose, but I'm learning more about the benefits of breathing through the nose because I've kind of moved away from that for a while. I went the Wim Hof approach of just breathe, motherfucker.
Yeah, like hyperoxygenation, just get all the oxygen you can.
And when you're doing the Wim Hof breathing, you are breathing with the fullness of your capacity. So that's not shallow breathing.
Right.
So when I'm doing that practice, I am not super picky. I let people know just big, heavy, full breaths
Yeah.
in my breathwork class. So I lead a breathwork class, which you should come to tonight if you can.
That'd be rad, dude.
At 8 p.m.
Okay.
It's called Breath Hype. I'll get there at like 7:20, and I'll be swinging mace with some people. So if you want to come by, swing some mace,
dude,
and then
where's
do some
that at?
breath work. It's at Orchard, Blackstone Orchard, right
Okay.
down the street on 5th. So yeah, I've been leading this Breath Hype class every Saturday for a while now. And in that modality, I'm not like super specific. We use different ways and patterns of breathing, but I always emphasize just big, full, powerful breaths is the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay. So so yoga, what was the journey from yoga? I'm trying to get like, when do we get the breath work, or like what was the journey from
So
there?
yoga and breath work went together immediately.
Okay.
Because immediately when you start doing yoga, you're practicing yogic breathing.
Right.
But in my yoga teacher training was when I first had my like breakthrough breath work experience.
Okay. What was that like?
It was crazy, man. It was like almost a psychedelic experience of like just an extreme altered state and purging. We actually did dynamic meditation mixed with breath work.
Okay.
So almost immediately I got plugged into like Elliot Hulse in his work with bioenergetic cathartic release using Osho dynamic meditation. So it's a really powerful practice, and it's what I also got introduced to almost hand in hand with breath work at my yoga teacher training. So we use the breath in a way to energetically open us, and we use chaotic breathing to try to break our neurotic holding patterns. So the idea is, throughout our life, we have intuitive reactions to circumstances that arise. However, because of cultural expectation, we have to block those intuitive reactions. For example, if you get pissed off at work, you want to punch your boss in the face, you can't because you'll get fired.
Right.
So what do? You put on a smile. You hold that shit in. That shit gets trapped in your musculature. And this happens from the day we're a kid, from the first time your mom says, don't cry in the store. You are storing shit inside you. And in this way, a lot of emotional, traumatic, energetic stuff gets like physically trapped within our musculature. And a lot of this is the work of Wilhelm Reich. And Elliot Hulse brought this to my attention. Osho also did a lot of stuff with this. So through the breath work, through the breathing, we hyper-oxygenate and charge ourselves in a way that unlocks a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And then you start mixing in some dynamic meditations that might appear as shaking, intense shaking, or screaming, like physically yelling, getting angry, maybe crying, maybe laughing, just allowing whatever is stored to start coming up. Because when you get into these 40-minute long intense breathwork sessions, like stuff starts to come up.
Yeah.
You might feel ecstatic feelings. You might notice sadness arising out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's really an interesting thing. People will say it's orgasmic. Some people will say like I cried. And then once that stuff starts coming up, we allow it to flow through us through different forms of movement. And that's been a really powerful practice, the combining of the breath work as a means to unlock stored trauma and release energy that's trapped within us, whether it's just stress from your day or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting how emotions can have a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
And if you don't address these things, whether it's just stress from work or some deep like a sadness from a loss or whatever the case may be, how it can really just bury itself like deep inside of you.
I want to emphasize something really quick. It's not just that emotions have physical manifestations, it's that emotions are a physical manifestation.
What do you mean?
So a lot of times we put a story on top of how we're feeling, right? And we call that our emotion. But how we feel is really an arising of where we're at biologically.
Oh, yeah.
So, we feel one way, and then we start to make a story about it. I saw this really well articulated in a Facebook post recently, and I'll butcher this, but it was something like this girl telling a story if she went on a date with a guy, and at first she was like, I'm not feeling this guy at all. And at some point during the date, she's like, I started to feel flustered and like warm. And I'm like, oh, did I guess wrong? Am I actually attracted to this guy? Maybe I was like, he is hot after all.
Yeah.
And then she went home, and it turns out she was sick. And what she was feeling was like a flu arising.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a good example of like how oftentimes our emotions arise from our physiological state.
Yeah, and then post emotion we try to put some sort of like meaning to it or understanding of it.
And of course, it's a feedback loop, you know?
Yeah.
You feel one way, you make a story about it, your story affects your actions affect how you feel, and it feedbacks.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get a feel for like kind of who you were in your early days. Yoga was your first movement language. No,
Yes.
no sports, no baseball, no nothing like
I played
that.
football and wrestled in high school, but I was very undergifted as an athlete. Like, I was the least flexible one of my friends, the least coordinated one of my friends. I always kind of strong, you know, because I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
But it was funny, after a few years of yoga, I'm the most flexible, the most coordinated. And my friends, I like to remind them, like, you guys remember, right? Like, when I was the worst of all you guys.
Yeah.
So, no excuses. You can do this too.
Right.
It's just, I've never really been a gifted mover. It just became a passion of mine.
Yeah, like a regular practice. And that's with anything, right? It just takes regular, dedicated work.
Yeah.
Just consistency really is key. So when did like steel mace and some of these other more unconventional modalities, walk into your life?
Dude, steel mace, man. So first of all, I absolutely fucking love steel mace. As you know, it's a unique thing that's really like occupied an interesting hole in my existence. I think this is kind of my how it unfolded for me. I did the steel mace certification at On It.
Okay.
And that was cool, and I liked it, and it didn't really click. It didn't catch.
Okay.
Because, I was sort of looking at it as a workout tool, and at that point it was like, all right, we can do switch squats, we can do 360s. I hadn't seen the flow element of it yet. And then a couple months later, I did the kettlebell cert. And at the kettlebell cert, I met Matt, Mace Pick, and he's like, hey, you ever heard of Leo Savage? And he started showing me some cool stuff with the mace. I was like, oh, this is sick. So I learned a couple moves from him, learned my first flow.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, this is awesome. Still didn't look up Leo. But just heard the name. And then at some point, I found Leo, and I saw the flow aspect, and I'd been in love with flow for a while, so it obviously, it clicked. My name was Mateo Flows on Instagram before I found Steel Mace Flow.
Okay.
But then I started seeing the flow, and it was just, it added such a dimension to the mace movement that just sparked creativity in me. It was like a dance. It was like a meditation. It was... And what really locked me in, I remember I was driving one day up to work, and I had this thought. I'm like, wait a minute. I realized that there was potential with Steel Mace Flow to map terrain that no one had mapped yet, to do a combination of movements that hadn't been done before.
Yeah.
And I was like, that just blew my brains. I was like, holy shit. I could be doing something no one's fucking done before.
Yeah.
Or at least it hasn't done in thousands of years.
It's not on video.
At least not on Instagram. I could be the first person to hit. And I did a move recently that I was like, I think I'm the first person to do this. The underarm swing, rotate one-hand punch out.
Okay.
People have been doing it two-handed. I tried it one-handed.
Yeah.
And it started to appear to me less almost like a work of art. You could create a pattern of movement that is a unique thing, like Leo did with the waterfall flow.
Yeah.
He created a thing, and I've just fallen in love with it, man.
Yeah. It's almost like a weird feeling, right? Whenever you do something, you're like, I don't think I've ever seen this before. Somebody has to have done it, right? There's almost like that second guessing, but more than likely, you are probably...
with pretty much everything else, that's probably the case, right?
Yeah.
With kettlebells, with barbells, with dumbbells, with medicine balls, someone's probably done it before. But with the mace, you could legit do something no one's ever done before.
Yeah.
And that just blew my brain. I was like, holy shit, I need to do this. I need to help pave the path.
Yeah, man, because it's such a new just modality and way of training, especially when you add the flow aspect to it. It's funny that you said a dance, because I've also felt that as you're developing your skills and you're getting better and you're just going down your journey with that tool, it just feels like there's a dance inside of you that's just waiting to just be unveiled. It's already there. It's just being uncovered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. So you were just using it as a regular modality.
And then
then started flowing with it.
Yeah.
Why is flow so important to you? Where did that come from?
It's an interesting topic, right?
Yeah, because you said that was important first.
I have a lot of thoughts about flow. And originally flow I viewed as a state of being, right? A state of not thinking about what I'm doing, but allowing something outside of my normal process of thought dictate what was guiding me.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of evolutions in my thinking of flow. It's it's a way of relating to life.
Yeah.
Right? It's a way of moving with the way that energy comes towards you. Flow represents a lot of things to me. How it applies to the mace specifically. Mace Pick in the building! Yeah, we were just talking about Mace Pick, and he rolls by on his bicycle. That's awesome.
It's the universe.
Yeah, this man taught me a lot about Mace, man. I learned so much from him just in the park, hanging out. He'd teach me a move.
Dude, he has beautiful movement.
He's one of the best in the world for sure. They're sleeping on Mace Pick. Learn about him.
Learn. Check him out. Look him up.
Yeah, man, the flow, it's just, you know what it is? I heard Ido Portal say this once. He's like, ever since I was a kid, I like to have a stick in my hand. And he's like, me and Gunnar Nelson, we both relate on that level. We both like to have a stick in our hand. Like, it just relates to something. Like, when you're a kid, you go out in the woods, you want a stick to swing.
Yeah.
And the mace fulfilled that, like, hole for me.
Okay.
Like, it's like, feels like a samurai with his sword, you know? It's like,
it's very natural feeling.
It's that tool. Like, it's that, you know, I think humans have had a long relationship with tools.
Oh, yeah.
And this one just, it clicked. It connects. It's almost like there's something about the offset nature to it that's almost primordial.
Oh, 100%. Like, you can feel it as soon as you pick up that tool. And I was just asking about flow in particular because it's definitely something that holds a special place in my heart is flow state. And I really have dove deep into it. Like, I don't know if you've read like The Rise of Superman or
I read Stealing Fire.
Stealing Fire. Yeah, exactly. Both great books. But I used to say I was an adrenaline junkie. Like, my first movement language was wrestling, so I didn't realize that. Like, it took me forever to even realize like movement was a language, and then whenever I realized like that's the way I communicate best, like then it just all started clicking. But I always relate most movements to like a wrestling terminology. But you know, I competed for so long, just a decade of fighting, and I fought professionally. And I used to always tell myself, oh, I'm an adrenaline junkie. Like, people always say, Adam, why do you fight? Why do you want to get in there? Because, like, I'm not a confrontational guy. Like, I don't really get my rocks off by fighting people. But, like, I'm like, man, dude, I love the adrenaline. But then I realized it's not adrenaline that I like. It's flow. I was addicted to flow, man. Like, you get in there, the stakes are high. It's you and another human being. Like, you're basically naked. I just have like spandex shorts on. Like, everybody can see. You're super exposed. And then when you're in a fight and you're not thinking, you're outside of yourself. You're just moving. You're reacting. Everything's clicking. You hear people in every sport like, oh, I was just in the zone. Everything was clicking. Like, I realized that's what I'm addicted to. I'm addicted to just doing, and then once the competition is done, once the fear has passed or the threat or whatever it is, and like you're able to come back to this state, because when you're in flow you don't really typically realize you're in it, right? And then you come to and you're just so euphoric and just so happy, and I'm just like, that was the best feeling. So I always mistake that for adrenaline, but I realized, like, dude, it's flow. Like, there's something very special about that state of being.
Yeah, it's getting out of your own way, you know. It's there's a lot of different ways I like to think about it, you know, letting the universe move through you.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes I notice, like, whenever I'm flowing with the mace, or if I'm trying to flow, it's just a matter of like just getting my mind out of the way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, don't judge what's happening, just do it. And I feel like a lot of people just we're so busy living in fear and judgment that it'll stop people from just doing.
So one way that I think about it, and there's a lot of ways to think about it, like I said.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's a lot of voices in our head, right? A lot of voices communicating and chattering for the decisions that we make and the movements that we choose. And I think when for me, when I'm in flow, it's almost like there's a language of proprioception. There's a language of sense of what your body is feeling. And you get it when you need a stretch, right? It's something that yoga really helped me connect to. Yeah. It's that feeling of like, oh, I need to do this right now. And the more that you move, the more that you understand, you build a language of relation to that voice in your head. Yeah. So, like, that's one thing that yoga is really good for, is it teaches you a language. And then when you like, you hear the call of your body saying, like, oh, I'm feeling something, you know, oh, I need this. That's what you need. Yeah. And I think flow is getting into that proprioceptive voice, is just letting that dictate and guide. Oh. So as opposed to thinking like, oh, I got to do 3 mills on my right side, 3 mills on my left. I'm feeling, I need to do a mill here, and then I need to do a press here. That's what's going on in my body. Yeah. it's more of a feeling, less of a thinking, for sure.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's definitely more of a feeling. It's just doing. I don't know. I always just like
just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Fucking
Nike.
Nike with the best logo of all time.
Dude,
man.
they fucking killed it with that one, man.
Yeah.
So, dude, you just have such a very it's your energy is very like calming, yet there's also a lot of like power there behind like your energy. Like you're very
got strong coffee just pumping through
it's
me
intense.
right now.
There's an intensity there. Is it the strong coffee that's running through your
It's
veins
definitely
right now?
running through me. I had a good amount.
Yeah, well, you just seem very, just secure and like kind of what you're doing. I know we're all just kind of figuring it out.
Man.
But
I'm not secure at all.
Well,
people say that about me a lot, and I think I do a pretty good job of publicly displaying how uncertain and scared I get and fearful.
I think that's
I just
security.
I have been blessed to also be downloaded with a lot of great perspectives that even when I get trapped in my smaller self, which is constant, I try to always keep one toe out in the higher perspective looking down.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that because that's the perfect segue for like kind of where I'm going. What's been that catalyst for this journey for you? I mean, we've kind of talked. I've listened to some of the podcast episodes that you've done. Like, I mean, you're obviously like a proponent for like psychedelics and just spiritual journey. What's been that catalyst for that path for you? I mean, it's an ever evolving journey, right? And obviously, like you said, you feel like you're the most insecure and like you have a long way to go.
Yeah.
But which probably isn't wrong on the same note, right? But it's still a journey. So when did this start for you? Like, what's it been for you?
When did it start? Probably the first time I took mushrooms. I was in sophomore year of high school.
Yeah, were you just fucking around partying? Or
we took them on a nice sunny day, and we were hanging out on some grass, and it was one of those things. Just opened my eyes and showed me that everything I thought I knew wasn't necessarily what I thought it was.
Yeah, but you're open to that.
Oh, of course, I love it.
Yeah.
And what's been interesting to me is what you can take away from those experiences.
Right.
And how so many of these unconventional modalities have had a transformative impact on my life. And a lot of times it may seem like from the outside I'm somewhat of a generalist. I've had someone say that to me the other day. It's like, you do so many things, like your yoga teaching, your breath work, your steel mason, working at Strong Coffee. But to me, it's like unified by this principle of transformational modalities.
Yeah. They all fit to me. Like, whenever you say all those things, I'm like, oh, I see the puzzle there. Like, it all goes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when I say, like, you're open to it, I mean, a lot of people have very powerful experiences with plant medicine, but they don't really take that time to integrate or to really, like, evaluate those downloads.
Yeah.
So it's just, like, for lack of a better word, like a waste, if you will. But, like, you've taken you seem to be of the mind to like actually take time to be like reflective of those and let them help you just like build along the way.
So this is what it is, Adam. My dream, my goal, my vision is to take these transformational modalities and to master the science of their combinatory potential. So, for example, we have breath work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We take breath work, we combine it with dynamic meditation. We take breathwork, dynamic meditation, we combine it with ceremonial cacao. We take breathwork, dynamic meditation, ceremonial cacao, combine it with good music, combine it with peppermint in the air, different essential oils, combine it with an integrative practice such as monitored journaling or therapy. Kind of similar to what MAPS is doing with MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. I think that's just breaking the surface. Maybe we mix some DMT in with some electroshock massage like that lady's doing over there.
Yeah.
And I think the real potential is in the combinatory power of these things once they're put together in a system that is properly understood. It's a hard thing, but that's been the vision I've been working towards.
Does that beg the question, like, are we what is spirituality? You know what I mean? Is there really something spiritual there, or are we just a series of bells and whistles, if you will? You know, just you know what I mean? Just biological creatures, and it's like it's this input and that input, and it's
and
yeah, you know what I mean?
It's a yes and.
Yes and.
Yeah, that's
not an either or.
That's one of my new favorite phrases. Yes and.
I think that's a perfect way to say it.
Because the nature of reality is paradoxical. We both have free will, in that experientially that's how it occurs to us, that everything is a choice and we have control over those choices, and have no free will in the term that it's all mechanistic and it's all based on our external environment and the circumstances that we happen to arise in outside of our control, going all the way back to the time that we are born. It's yes and.
Yeah, I mean, your gut microbiome tells you what to eat.
Yeah.
To a
Yeah,
degree.
but in a way, it's like you are responsible for your destiny. You have complete
Yeah.
control. So it's all depending on which way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to think of perspectives as like windows, and like you look at it through one window, it looks one way. You look at it through another window, it looks another way.
100%, which is why I named this podcast Outside Perspective.
Yeah,
So that way I can
a
just
wonderful choice of name.
talk to these people and just get these different perspectives, man. So, man, brother, you're doing a lot of cool shit in the space. Take a second, if you don't mind, and just talk about like what you're doing here at the conference and with Strong Coffee and whatnot, because I was so excited to see you here yesterday. I felt so bad. Like, I never know like who cares and like who doesn't care if like we set up a podcast and we don't do it. Like, I try to make all my podcasts. Like, I don't. But sometimes you just kind of get the feelings like, oh man, like, all right, well, everybody's busy. Like, it's not a super big deal. And like, I was supposed to podcast with Adam this morning, and you said something to me. I was like, oh shit, man, like he really did. Like, yeah, it was actually on his mind, which which actually says something when somebody's really busy, but like they actually take the time to remember that. Because I can remember like in the beginning of my podcasting days, there's so many times where I'm like, hey, dude, we're podcasting like right now, and they're like, oh, dude, I completely forgot. Like, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I digress. That's neither here nor there. But you're here working with Strong Coffee. So, like, talk about that, man. Like, we were talking a little bit beforehand, though. You talked about you like to, volunteer and do different things.
Yeah, man. I have a habit I sometimes question of giving my time very freely to people I believe in. I was recently doing that with Strength Camp, Pflugerville, up north.
Yeah.
I just, when I believe in something, I'm all into it. And that's kind of how I presented myself to Adam. I was like, I love what you guys are doing. If I can ever be here to support, let me know. I'm here.
Yeah.
So I'm here volunteering my time, helping out, just because I believe in Adam. And I love, like I said in the very beginning, I support the people who support what supports me.
Yeah.
So Adam supports Leo, who supports Steel Mace Flow, and Steel Mace Flow has changed my life. So I want to support Strong Coffee, and I believe in him as a person. And to me, it's kind of one of those things where when you see somebody and you resonate with what they're doing and they're farther along in the journey than you, I think it's good to get close and to just, I believe in giving, I believe in showing up, and there's many times when in my life where I've questioned and I've been like, damn, like maybe I shouldn't have just done that all and been a little bit more selfish. But I just have to have faith that,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's all meant to be as long as I do it with good intention.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, man, I'm a firm believer like the energy that you put out is the energy that's returned. And
look at the podcast that came out of me volunteering my time. Like,
dude, yeah, exactly. Like, I wouldn't have expected. Like, I know we were supposed to sit down. I think it was like in like September. I was here for a cert at I think it was it was November. It was a Steel Mace cert at On It. I was so wiped out. And then like, I think the night we were supposed to do it, Leo took a group up to the Orchard Studio, and you guys had like a pretty epic flow session that night. So I was just like, all right, well, at least he's like, I didn't like completely like waste your time. I felt really bad about that. So,
dude, it's all good.
Sorry about that. But yeah, dude, Strong Coffee is doing some really cool stuff. I mean, they got collagen in their coffee.
They're gonna be killing it, man.
Yeah,
they're gonna
dude,
be killing
it's like all positive.
I think they've sold more product than any other booth at this venue.
Yeah, dude, just growing the community, just in general. I feel like that's just such a beautiful thing, and the more we can do that, the more everybody wins. Yeah. So, all right, brother. Well, look, dude, I really appreciate you taking this time.
Dude, it was a pleasure, my man.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. So, I want to leave the floor to you.
Hell yeah.
Anything you want to plug? Sponsors. How can people find you? Your socials, whatever.
Yeah, y'all should for sure learn about Steel Mace Flow if you're unfamiliar. Instagram is the place to go. Just Instagram Steel Mace Flow, Instagram Leo Savage. If you want to follow along with me, my Instagram is Mateo. That's Mateo. Flows, FLOWS. And I post a bunch of breath work, a bunch of Steel Mace Flow, and a bunch of events that are trying to put together to make these transformational modalities available. So if you're in the Austin, Texas area, for sure you should be following me. That's it, my man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put all this in the show
Pleasure,
notes so
brother.
people can find you,
Fucking
brother.
pleasure.
All right, brother. All right, everybody. Until next time.